Welcome back to Craft Computing, everyone. As always, I'm Jeff, and today we're going to be taking a look at the all-new Fractal Design Meshify S2, their largest Meshify case yet. Having built in one of the previous Meshify cases, I'm more than curious to find out how much more breathing room this one actually has. This is the Fractal Design Meshify S2, and before we get into putting all of the parts on the table into the case, as this is a PC case review and I'd like to build a PC in the case and then review it, I know that's kind of abstract sometimes, but that's the way I like to do things. I'm going to walk through some of the more interesting features on this case, and then we'll get to assembly. Starting with the feature that gives the Fractal Design Meshify S2 its distinctive looks, as well as the other Meshify cases in the series, is that asymmetrical front mesh panel that's kind of a stealth fighter inspired look. Behind that panel sits 340mm fan mounts, which allows you to have unrestricted airflow into your case, blowing fresh air onto every component you have. Continuing along the top of the case, we see an additional 3 140mm fan slots with actually 420mm support for a radiator on top. There's an additional 140mm slot on the back, as well as 2 more 140s on the bottom, and if you're keeping count, that's 9 140mm fan slots on this case. So if you wanted a high airflow case design, this is a winner right out of the box. One thing I really appreciate Fractal Design including in a lot of their modern cases is actually built-in fan controllers. All too often I'll go to review a case and they'll include 2 or 3 fans and no controller at all, and leave it up to the user to actually buy a controller and install it in the case, which kind of messes up your cable management and oftentimes leads to issues cooling your system. In this case, there's actually 3 PWM headers and 6 voltage headers, so I can plug in all 9 fans on this case at the same time and have them controlled by my motherboard. On the front panel of the case, we've got 2 USB 3.0 ports, as well as a USB 3.1 Type-C front panel header, which I am very excited to see. There's also your typical front audio in and out, as well as the power and reset button, which, if I must say, feel a little bit stiff for my liking. They're good buttons, but they're a little hard to press. Moving inside the case, and one thing I'm really excited for is actually the full open interior chassis of it. The main chamber, there's nothing in there except for your motherboard mounts. So building inside this case is going to be an absolute dream to do. There's also a full-length power supply shroud, so hiding all of your cable management crimes down in the basement should be pretty trivial. There is vertical GPU mounting support in this case, but unfortunately I don't have the optional bracket, and you will have to buy that if you want to vertically mount in this case. But one thing I am very happy to see is the vertical mount is actually recessed from the glass panel in this case, which means airflow should not be an issue if that's how you want to mount your GPU. Moving around to the back side of the case, there are 3 3.5-inch hard drive mounts mounted vertically along the back shell of this case. Reminds me a lot of the old Define S, which I was really a fan of. However, the spacing on these could be an issue, as I did have an issue in the Define S of reaching all 3 drives with a daisy chain SATA cable. So we'll see if that is in fact an issue in this case as well. There's also 2 2.5-inch hard drive mounts mounted to the back of the motherboard tray, so those should be nice and easy to get to, nice and easy to route cables to. There's also a lot in built-in cable management, a lot of grommets here, and support for up to a 300mm power supply, so you can put pretty much whatever you want in here. I think that about does it for a rough walkthrough of the case. Let's go ahead and get all of the parts from here and get them assembled into the case over here. I feel like Patrick all of a sudden. Oh well. We'll go through any installation difficulties, which I don't foresee having any based on just kind of a rough walkthrough of this case. And we'll go through filters and final thoughts. Let's get to it. Couple of jump cuts later, and the build is now complete, and quite honestly, right off the bat, the Meshify S2 is one of the nicest cases that I've built in quite some time. And that's saying something, because I think it's been about 8 or 9 months since I've given a negative review on any cases. So, starting with build quality, this thing is solid as a rock, even with all of the side panels removed. So that's tempered glass, back panel, front, top. This thing is just magnificent to build in. And because all of those side panels come off, you can easily get your hands into places that you normally wouldn't be able to reach. Now, Fractal says this is their largest Meshify to date, and that's kind of putting it mildly. Honestly, the footprint isn't that much larger than a Meshify C, but this supports up to EATX motherboards, and honestly, an EATX felt downright small trying to install it into this case, even with a tower cooler installed. So again, the build process on this was just downright simple given the size of components that you can fit inside. Probably the only area I had even a slight amount of difficulty installing was this uppermost 140mm fan here. The front bezel doesn't pull away from the case very far because the front I/O cables are a little bit tight right there. Now, it's really only for those top 2 screws. Everything else in the front went together easy as you please. The top fans mount to an assembly very similar to the one found in the Define R6, and you pop this top filter off, makes it nice and easy for cleaning. And then there's 4 screws in the top right here that allow the entire assembly to come up and out of the case, allowing you to install the fans and your radiators and then just drop them right back into place. The power supply shroud, as predicted, provides plenty of room for cable management, and even with the front 1/3 of the shroud removed so I can install all 3 140mm fans up front, every single cable in this case is routed and tucked exactly where it needs to go. Almost. I did run into one issue with the front I/O cabling in this case, and that's actually with the front USB-C connector right here. The cable on it is not nearly long enough. In fact, when I routed it with the rest of the front I/O cables, it fell short of the motherboard tray. Now, I was able to stop it about halfway down, drape it across the back of the hard drive mounts, and then plug it into the motherboard. But that's not exactly ideal when the rest of the front I/O cables run down all the way along the length of the case. I'd like to see an extra 6 to 8 inches added onto this cable so it could route cleanly with the rest of the cabling. And of course, I thought I was going to have a gotcha moment with the Fractal engineers, but it appears yet again they're smarter than I am. Remember in the intro that I mentioned that the hard drive trays are arranged vertically much like the Define S, and that I was never able to cleanly plug in one SATA power cable into all 3 drives. Well, it just so happens that Fractal has included a 3-into-1 SATA adapter that is the perfect length to reach all 3 drives. So, Fractal, yeah, you're smarter than I am. Way to go. Good job. So what else is there to say? I'm sure if I spent the next couple of days digging through my shelf and going through all my parts, I could probably find some component that didn't fit in here just perfectly. But that would really end up being a niche and nitpicky complaint, and quite honestly, I'm having a hard time finding anything I don't like about the Meshify S2. I also want to give props to Fractal for the little touches that are in this case, things that a lot of other manufacturers don't include in their cases, and they put the onus on the customer to include to round out the build. Things like the 3 140mm fans when normally 120s are included. Things like the integrated fan controller, or the SATA power adapters to connect all of my hard drives when normally it'd be on me to daisy chain some adapters together. It's things like that that really make the build process that much more complete and that much more enjoyable when I don't have to go back to Fry's or Micro Center to pick up something that I forgot. The mesh front provides unrestricted airflow for all of your cooling needs, and not only is there enough room to build any air cooling system you'd ever want to, there's enough room to build any water cooling system you'd ever want to. There's even pre-drilled holes for pumps, reservoirs, and even a pass-through fitting for a dedicated fill port up on top. The Meshify S2 supports up to EATX size motherboards and air coolers of up to 165mm in height. There's also support for up to a 420mm radiator on top and a 360mm on the front. The build quality is amazing, the ease of install is second to none, and the cable management on this is dead simple. When I get to the end of a case review and the only negative point on my list is I wish the USB-C front header was about 8 inches longer, you've done your job perfectly, Fractal. The Fractal Design Meshify S2 goes on sale today, and if you're looking for a great-looking, build-anything case with open airflow design and great water cooling support, stop looking and just go click the link below and pick one up for yourself. It is a fantastic case that is going to serve you well no matter what you put inside of it. That's going to do it for this one, guys. Let me know what you guys think of the Fractal Design Meshify S2 down in the comments below. And remember, there's more than one version of this. This is the black version with the smoked glass panel. There's also one with a clear glass panel, one with just a metal side panel, and it's also available in white. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at Craft Computing, and if you're interested in financially backing the channel, consider hitting me up on Patreon at Craft Computing. You'll get access to my exclusive Discord server where you can chat with myself and the other hosts from Talking Heads. If you're interested in any of the parts that I put in this build, make sure to follow the Amazon or Newegg affiliate links down in the video description. There will be a full part list down below. Also, if you're interested in the MSI X299 creation motherboard I used, I will have a full review coming very shortly, so stay tuned for that. That's going to do it for me in this one, guys. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Cheers, guys. Special case, special beer. Now, if you're a beer enthusiast, you don't need any explanation on what this label is. If you're not a beer enthusiast, I'm going to... If you're not a beer enthusiast, oh my god, that smells amazing. I'm going to introduce you to the Goose Island Bourbon County Stout. This one, if you are a beer enthusiast, is even more special, as this is the 2016 edition, so this has been aging an additional 3 years. And oh my god, that smells amazing. Now what this is actually a series of beers put out by Goose Island. This is the Bourbon County Stout series of beers. And they put out a traditional stout, which is what this one is, which has elements of charred oak, vanilla, caramel, and smoke. And they age it in bourbon barrels for up to 5 years. So these are absolutely amazing and very highly sought after. As I said, this one's a 2016 edition, so this has been aging almost an additional 3 years in the bottle. So I'm expecting this to be very, very smooth. Anyway, these are always fantastic, and they have a whole bunch of different varieties that come out, but they only come out about once a year. So if you can find one, get one. I shouldn't be drinking a 14.5% beer right now, but this is just delicious. Oh, I have to work now. Dang it. Oh, that roast that's at the end of it, that, there's no coffee in this, but it definitely has a coffee-like roast at the back end. I didn't get it in the first drink, but I really got it in that second drink. That is just so very pleasant. There's the woody finish from the oak. There's definitely some bourbon that hits you right up front. Man, there's so much going on in this beer. If you chew it, you get some of the caramel and some of the vanilla starting to come out. And then that coffee roasted smoke finish on the back end of it. All while that bourbon is just kind of playing with your tongue the whole time. Oh, that is just so good. Sorry, this is a PC building video, not a beer review. Okay, I promise I'm done for now. Let's go. Let's move on.